Vado? Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I think we are ready to start. Is the translation working? Can you hear the translation? Can you nod? Okay, thank you. Welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to this panel, whose main focus is coffee, that we all know and that we appreciate. Here we're going to see how we can provide opportunities for growth in the coffee sector, especially in Africa. I want to thank the Italian government, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and Ambassador Gatti, and clearly Vice Minister Cirielli. UNIDO here is represented by our friend Gunther. Thank you to Andrea De Marco and to all the team, and thank you to all the other participants that will be presented later on. The idea is to talk about coffee and the coffee sector in Africa as the main tool for development and for the creation of labor opportunities and income opportunities for millions of people to meet consumers' needs. So thank you to the Italian cooperation whose strategic activity has been focusing on coffee and the coffee sector to improve its resilience, to tackle climate change, which has an enormous impact, and to consider coffee as a tool for development for all local communities. I'm representing the ICO, the International Coffee Organization, consisting of 75 members that was set up 61 years ago by the United Nations to help those who produce and process coffee to make it sustainable, so as to ensure the continuation of coffee production for future generations. Over the past 60 years, and the experts with me know that very well, coffee has been growing a lot and significantly by 3% a year. Now, as we're talking about Africa, Africa played a very important role in the 1960s and 70s for coffee production. It accounted for 21%. Today, 11% of production comes from Africa. This means that the growth of other regions, and especially Asia, has been higher than the African coffee sector. However, this is not a negative factor, but an opportunity for growth. The coffee sector in Africa is also characterized by a limited number of countries. Only 5 countries produce 90% of the coffee, but there are at least 20-25 producing small quantities. So rebalancing the system would provide a new labor employment opportunities. The effort made by Italy on coffee and on Africa within the G7 framework and the Mattei plan is definitely very important. And I really have the honor here on that to introduce and give the floor to Mr. Edmondo Cirielli, who is a politician. And since November 2022, he has been the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and is also responsible for cooperation. I'll give you the floor, Vice Minister. Tell us why coffee and why Africa is so important for the Italian strategy. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers of the meeting. that can always focus on very important topics, not just for our society, but for the global society. The Italian Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Italian cooperation is at the forefront to support this meeting, which is a wonderful opportunity for meeting among peoples and for debate. These panels are also very important to launch many different messages, to speak together, and to make our guests understand what Italy is doing and how Italy is engaged. Thank you very much to the Minister for Agriculture of Uganda for being with us yesterday, together with his Prime Minister was already attending some event. Thank you to the representative of the IACO and the ICO, and thank you to UNIDO. Thank you to all the representatives. All the different organizations are playing a very important role in supporting Italian contribution to the coffee sector and to the African continent. Africa is a tremendous opportunity for Italy, which is the European nation. Well, it is somewhat European and somewhat African nation due to its geographical and historical location. In any case, Italy is among the first 20 Western economies and worldwide, among the 7 top economies in the West, and we are morally engaged in the development of Africa. Clearly, we also have to talk about opportunities. Africa is a very rich continent. It has tremendous opportunities, and cooperation meets some moral obligations. And also the economic driver is very important. The growth of Africa means growth for Europe and growth for Italy. So why do we focus on coffee? Italy is not only a country where we consume a lot of coffee, but it is the nation enhancing coffee. Today, Italian coffee has a great influence worldwide. We have acquired tremendous skills in processing and in marketing in the coffee sector. Also, Italy has big entrepreneurial capacities. We have very important families. Here we have representatives of the Illy family, one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the coffee sectors. And we also have small entrepreneurs and small companies working on coffee. We have acquired a tremendous know-how that can be exported elsewhere. This is why the public and the private sector have a common idea to work in Eastern Africa. Italian cooperation has a long-standing tradition of working in this region, especially in Ethiopia and in general in Eastern Africa. Here we are starting from 5 pilot countries, and together with the Directorate for Italian Cooperation and Mr. Gatti is the director, we have convinced the European Union to focus on these countries. Clearly, in the short term, we are also working to provide economic support so that people can be given a job, so that they can be given a future. And we are present and we operate not just as entrepreneurs, but also as agricultural producers, because we're also excellent in agriculture. So we carry out many different initiatives. UNIDO had an important task. We financed the project of this idea. We used UNIDO's great expertise, and in short term, we're going to have a very important project that can be shared with our African partner countries, and that can be extended to the 25, if I'm not wrong, African countries that have the geomorphological characteristics because they have a coffee plant. The climate fund allocated by Italy to support the financing of activities fighting against climate change should also be used and as a useful tool in this sector, which is very important.
Mille grazie per l'intervento e come dicevamo proprio poc'anzi.
Thank you very much for your words. We were talking about the importance of the role of Italy in the G7, which for the first time has been talking about coffee at such a very high level. So what you were saying is very important, because this effort has also involved all the other countries, and that has to be highlighted. Now, let's give the floor to the people producing coffee. And Uganda is the fifth coffee producer worldwide. There are more than 1.2 million coffee producers, I think, living and sometimes surviving thanks to coffee. So it is very important to give the floor to the State Minister of Agriculture, Fred Bwino Kyakulaga. As I said before, I hope I haven't mispronounced your name. Fred Bwino, you have the floor. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. First of all, I would like to thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Italy, who has hosted us this afternoon in this panel. I also thank other participants on the panel and the entire audience. Uganda is known as the Pearl of Africa because it's the most beautiful country in Africa. But besides the beauty, Uganda is also the birthplace for Robusta coffee. And it is ranked third best in terms of coffee quality in the world. However, we also produce Arabica coffee. We produce Robusta coffee, 80%, and 20% Arabica coffee. And the location of Uganda, which is strategically astride the equator, makes Uganda a reliable source of coffee throughout the year. And above all that, Uganda's Robusta coffee is high altitude grown. It is grown above 900 meters above the sea level. And this makes Uganda Robusta mild in flavor and strictly hard bean, which is suitable for espresso type of coffee. Currently, Uganda produces 8 million 60 kilogram bags of coffee per year, but the country has the potential to produce up to actually more than 20 million bags per year. So this is where now I come to answer some 3 key questions. Question number 1, what is the role of coffee in Uganda's economy? I'll spend a few minutes on that. Uganda is coffee is Uganda's leading export commodity, and it contributes between 20 and 30% of the national foreign exchange. And in the past 10 decades, this has been the situation. During the last year, Uganda earned 1.45 billion shillings from coffee. Actually, it was 1.14 billion US dollars, not shilling. Besides earning the foreign exchange for Uganda, coffee is also a significant source of earnings for the smallholder farmers in Uganda. And we have about 1.9 million smallholder farmer households that are involved in coffee production. And all these derive their livelihood from coffee. But however, much as coffee is very important to Uganda's economy, the sector continues to face a number of challenges. And I'll mention a few of these challenges. Challenge number 1 is that Uganda relies on export only, because we export 75% of the coffee that we produce, and we consume only 5% of the coffee that we produce. And the 20% remains unsold each year. And we are forced to push that 20% to the next year. And this situation makes Uganda vulnerable to the fluctuations in the international market prices. The second challenge is that Uganda adds either little or no value to the coffee that we grow. The bigger proportion of the Ugandan coffee is exported to the consumer countries as low-value green bean. And I'll give you the figures. In the preceding year, Uganda exported 6.1 million bags of 60 kilogram bags, and we earned 1.14 billion US dollars, as I said. However, only 400,000 kilograms of value-added coffee was exported, meaning that about 94.6% of the coffee that we exported was of low value unprocessed coffee. As a result of this situation, Ugandans earn very little from the coffee that we grow. I'll give again an example of this. I want to compare how much the coffee growers earn compared to what the end seller of coffee in a cafe earns. Coffee producers in Uganda earn $3.3 US from 1 kilogram of green coffee. But from the same 1 kilogram of green coffee, sellers of espresso coffee, for example, in a cafe, in all the coffee destinations, get about 80 cups from that 1 kilogram of green bean. And if you compute 80 cups times about 1.2, about $1.1 per cup, then you would get about $107.4 US from 1 kilogram of green bean. So you compare the $3.3 for the farmer and $107.4 for the person selling coffee of the same quantity at the end of the chain. Another challenge is the effects of climate change. Effects of the current climate change, like prolonged drought, unpredictable seasons, floods, and high incidence of diseases and pests, is leading to high mortality and low coffee production. And this is exacerbated by low use of technology in Uganda. The fourth challenge is low level of research. As we talk now, the coffee genome is almost the same for all the coffee producers. And in Uganda, we have a narrow range of coffee varieties that we are growing. And this is because of low research. This makes the coffee value chain vulnerable. God forbid, if we got a very challenging disease for the coffee, it means that our coffee can be wiped out totally. And the last challenge is that urbanization in Uganda is encroaching on the land that we have been using for growing coffee because there is increased urbanization. And I think the solution to this is to expand coffee growing into other new areas. Finally, I want to talk about the importance of Italy's participation in coffee development. I want to state right from the onset that the government of Uganda recognizes the importance of the participation of Italy in the coffee subsector. And we appreciate the collaboration that my government has with the Italian government in this sector. And we look forward to even more collaboration in this sector. We also recognize the role of UNIDO in this sector and other actors in this sector. In this very event, we have been discussing specific interventions that Uganda and Italy will work together in the sector of coffee. And we are looking forward to sealing this kind of arrangement in the subsequent months under the Italian METAI plan. I thank you for listening to me, for God and my country.
Grazie, signor Ministro, per aver...
Thank you very much to the Minister for giving us a very clear idea of the situation and opportunities of coffee in Uganda. Right. Thank you very much also for staying with us and sticking to the time given. Now, our friend Gunther Beger, who is the Managing Director of the Directorate for Innovation and Economic Transformation of UNIDO. He was the director of Germany, the World Bank, and for many years he was the leader of the Ministry for Cooperation for Development. Gunther, I leave you the floor. Tell us why UNIDO is here and why you are here and what you are doing together. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Gerardo. And first of all, I would also like to thank Italian government, Minister Cirielli, our friends from Italian cooperation, Mr. Gatti, Mr. Rusconi, for inviting us to this wonderful exhibition, this wonderful event. And I have to say, I'm very, very impressed about what I have seen this day. And of course, we at the UNIDO, we are proud that we have the possibility on the other side of this hall to present our wonderful cooperation with our Italian partners. Not only the government, but also with famous Italian companies like Illy, Lavazza, Eni, and other ones. Why we are here, Gerardo? Of course, you are a former staff of UNIDO. You know what UNIDO is doing, but perhaps for our audience, it's important to know that we are an UN organization and responsible for sustainable industrial development in our partner countries. We work in 90 countries, a lot of African countries, and we have 172 member states. And Italy is one of the very prominent one. I see our ambassador in Vienna here in the audience. Thank you very much, Deborah. You are very much supportive for our work. And you are a perfect ambassador for your country in Vienna. Yes, we have 172 member states. And Italy is a very important one. Thanks to your government, Minister Cirielli, Italy is the second biggest donor. And we could work on 35 projects in all over the world. And why we are here? We are one of the agencies supporting the Italian government in its work to improve the economic situation in our partner countries. And industrial development very often goes via agriculture, via food industry. And for example, in the coffee sector, we already learned 100 million people are working. And at the beginning of this very important value chain, 25 million people working with the production of coffee. On big farms, for example, in Brazil and Vietnam, but also on very small farms in Ethiopia, in Uganda, and other countries. And the Minister already mentioned the importance of the coffee sector for Africa. What is special in our approach together with the Italian government and the Italian companies? That is this cooperation, the cooperation with the private sector, Gerardo. The private sector has a lot of more knowledge, experiences, and only together with the private sector we can develop economies. And that is a really special approach in our cooperation. And thank you, Minister Cirielli and the government, for the trust in our cooperation, that we join forces together with the private sector, with companies like Illy, a visionary of sustainable development, together with our friends in Africa, in other countries, and together with you, Gerardo, the International Coffee Organization, and together with our friends from the African Coffee Organization, we will start our partnership today with signing a MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, later. And we are just started to work together in the coffee sector in 2015. This was the expo in Milano, when we start our cooperation with the Italian government. And now we are working in 3 African countries. And I'm very grateful to Italian government that we will start a new program, an African-wide approach, as the minister already mentioned, an African-wide approach in working together in the coffee sector. And that means that we start in several sectors, several areas, together with IACO, and this project will have different components. Investment aimed at increasing climate resilience. The minister mentions the challenges of the climate change, but also in training to improve supply chain, to support the local production. And my friend, Minister Bwino, mentioned 95% of its production is exported. It's unprocessed exported. And that is something we have to work together to improve this figure. And also on the research of coffee, of course, to preserve biodiversity and limit deforestation. And last but not least, also to improve social rights and working conditions on the farm. So I have to stop. But once more, I think that is a fantastic approach here together. And we are very delighted to be partner of this approach. We are very delighted to support Italian government also in the implementation of the Mattei plan and the new G7 initiative. Thank you so much.
Grazie Gunther e grazie.
Thank you very much, Gunther, and thank you all. You all had a perfect timing. It's the first time in my life I see so rigorous speakers. It's great. Thank you. And now let's go back to Africa and with Ambassador Solomon Rutega, the Secretary General of the Inter-African Coffee Organization. And this organization plays a key role with respect to all the topics we are discussing. And so, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gerardo. Thank you very much. The distinguished Vice Minister, the distinguished Deputy Minister of State for Agriculture from Uganda, the Managing Director of the United Nations International Development Organization, Mr. Andrea, Illy, the founder of Illy, and the delegation from Uganda, Her Excellency, our ambassador, and the team from the Uganda Investment Authority, and all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the team from UNIDO, thank you very much. I would like to thank the Italian government for hosting us together with the UNIDO team. My statement is going to cover 3 areas. The challenges have already been identified by the minister from Uganda. These cut across Africa. So I will share the role of the Inter-Africa Coffee Organization. I will also talk about our relation with the African Union. And then the third area, I will share with you the initiatives that we have undertaken in line with the Mattei Plan and also the African Union Agenda 2063, which is also related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So I will start off with IACO. For those who don't know IACO, we are the oldest intergovernmental organization in Africa. We were established 64 years ago. We shall be celebrating our 64th birthday in December. This organization represents all the 25 coffee-producing countries on the continent. In the whole world, there are 50 countries that produce coffee, and 50% are in Africa. Africa is also the birthplace of all the coffee that you drink here, originated from Africa. Ethiopia is the origin of Arabica coffee. Uganda is the origin of Robusta coffee. So there's a historical, a cultural relationship with this product called coffee. Besides the importance of coffee as the second largest traded commodity in the world after oil, second largest consumed, I think, after water. So coffee is, I think if there's a shortage of coffee, there might be a crisis in the world. It's a national security. It's a political commodity. So this is a very important commodity. So what we do in IACO, we represent all the coffee-producing countries in trying to harmonize the challenges and also explore the opportunities on the African continent. So we have undergone a several transition in the last 64 years. We had the quota regime from 1960 to 1989. And then we have the post-quota regime, which is a liberalization regime from 1990 to now. So our vision under this new regime is to transform the African coffee sector through value addition across the value chain. And that's why we're very happy with these 2 initiatives, the Mattei Plan and the G7, because it ties in with the vision of transformation on the improvement of quality and productivity, investing in the value addition infrastructure, and of course capacity building. These are tied in with the Mattei Plan, the 5 priority areas of education and training, agriculture, and the other social areas of water and health. So we're very happy with this initiative. Now, this vision operates under 4 strategic objectives. The first one that we do at IACO is the role of political advocacy. We advocate for good policies at the African Union level. We also work very closely with other development partners like the United Nations in trying to advocate for policies that are good for the climate change, to address the challenges of climate change, to address the problems of value addition, to address the problems of education, capacity building. So we cover all this at the role of advocacy. The second objective is the issue of research and development. And I'm here with the director of the Africa Coffee Research Network, Dr. Celestine, who's in charge of coordinating all the research on the African continent in terms of coming up with varieties that can help on the threats of climate change. So research and development is very critical. The third one is private sector partnerships with the government. Here we work very closely with the Africa Coffee Fine Association and also the Africa Coffee Robusta Association. We want the private sector and the government to work together in addressing the challenges facing the coffee sector. The fourth one is training and capacity building, and that's where Illy and other institutions like the Lavaz and other companies come up on training. So Illy has done a project in Ethiopia that we are supporting. And this project of training and education is very important. So we are going to work very closely with the Illy model in opening other training centers on the continent. So those are the 4 areas that are in line with the transformation of our vision for the African coffee sector. Now, the initiatives that we've undertaken are all at those levels of political, economic, and social. And we are going to work very closely in working on this initiative together. So with, I hope I'm within my time limit. Gerardo, thank you.
Veramente la sentiamo alla perfezione.
Wonderful. We now, it's almost perfection. It's almost flawless, this timing now. We're looking for a mic for Mr. Illy. Here it is. Right, so we have now the opportunity to listen to the representative of a company that processes coffee. So we have the producers, the politicians, the organizations supporting this sector, but then we have the coffee processors that are key to let us taste a good espresso. Thank you. Thank you very much for your introductory words, but also a special thank to the Italian government for taking such a strong leadership in international cooperation in order to support a crop that it's an important revenue source for the producing countries, but also it's at the center of our daily lives. So let's not forget that there are at least 2 billion consumers of coffee all over the world, and for them, coffee is a source of vitality and also of pleasure. So we are going through a very surreal situation because the added value is produced mostly in the consuming countries. So the countries that are in the northern part of the world, first Europe and then the US, and then in the rest of Asia. This added value that results from the processing of coffee, but also from the consumption of coffee. 5% more or less of the final value remains in the production countries. And it is too little because very often, too often, this contributes to poverty. 50% of the 25 million smallholder farmers growing coffee is below the poverty threshold. This is an extremely serious situation, and ethically this is unacceptable. That is why we need to keep working and fighting, and the international community led by the International Coffee Organization, that is the only intergovernmental world body in the field, to keep studying, promoting and endorsing policies to improve the living conditions in the plantations. But the most important strategies has to do with the improvement of the quality, because if the quality improves, more coffee will be consumed and it will be paid more. And on this respect, Italy is really the leading country when it comes to quality. And the Deputy Minister Cirielli said rightfully that we are the best sort of coffee makers. And my family was the first one to invent the sort of pressure espresso. But then there is the espresso consumed at a bar. We have a bar every 500 inhabitants in Italy. That gives an idea of how much coffee we consume. And then we have coffee shops all over the world because the coffee experience is so loved. So certainly we are leaders when it comes to coffee economy, because in the Western world, as a matter of fact, I mean, coffee consumption started in Venice and also in Vienna, and sort of towards, I mean, the mid-1800s. So we certainly started this history, and this history continues today. But the added value generated in the consuming countries, it's a sort of anomaly. So we can fix that by improving the quality. It's harder to produce in the individual producing countries because and then exporting, because unfortunately, I mean, we have the equator, and that works like a wall. So it's hard to have sorts of trading flows between the north and south of the world. They're still very difficult. That is why we are here today, because very often the countries in the south of the world have a much lower GDP per capita. They have institutions that sometimes are less robust, and also the cost of money is from 3 to 5 times higher than in the consuming countries. And because of all these factors, it's very hard for them to somehow defeat poverty. And it's hard for them to trigger virtuous production circles that could lead to an increase in margins. And beyond all of this, we have climate change that is an additional problem, because coffee grows in very specific climate conditions in terms of temperature and humidity. And these conditions are heavily affected by climate change. And this leads to major production difficulties because, I mean, the quality risks to be damaged. And so, I mean, climate change may pose a threat to not only the productivity, but also the quality of the produced coffee. Sometimes harvesting can be compromised by climate change. That is why we need to foster resilience in order to better cope with climate change. And after one of the most important events in the history of coffee, organized in Italy during the Expo 2015 in Milan, and I was representing there the International Coffee Organization, and we organized a conference. And one of the most famous sustainability economists, Jeffrey Sachs, came to us, joined this conference, and gave us a very bad news, that 50% of the land that can be used to grow coffees will be lost by 2050 because of climate change. And, well, after those words, a real international mobilization was started to understand what to do. Well, is there going to be enough coffee in spite of this reduction in the lands that can be used to grow coffee? Well, this is the coffee security is not completely threatened, but the problem is that you may have a hyper concentration, especially in Brazil and Vietnam, that could go to the detriment of African countries in case they would not have the resources required to adapt to climate change. So concentrating production in just 2 countries may also jeopardize the biodiversity. When it comes to wine, we have Italian wine, French wine, Australian wine, wine from New Zealand. So we have different production countries with different characteristics, and these somehow contributes to, the diversity of our products. So if you really want to improve the quality of coffee and also to increase the prices, we need to diversify more and not diversify less. That is why we need to support as much as possible the countries that may be heavily threatened by climate change in the future years. Well, when it comes to quantities, we need to understand, because quantities seems not to be a problem, we need to work on resilience. How can we do that? First of all, we should improve the growing methods. Well, sometimes coffee is still produced while grown with very basic methods, without irrigation methods, special watering methods, or the digitization or mechanization of farming. Well, this is present in the most competitive countries like Brazil, that is the world production leader with more than 40%. But we still have very sort of traditional methods. So there is no industrial methodology. And so we should instead favor new farming methods to improve resilience. But then we need to renew the plantations. And, well, coffee is a perennial plant, so it can produce for decades. And the longest plants are 1 century old. They were planted during colonialism, but, well, then productivity goes down and there is greater exposure to diseases. But we should have then plants that are more resistant to climate change and younger plants. But renewing the plantations has a cost and requires time. So we should improve agronomic methods and rejuvenate the plantations. If this won't be the case, we may think about relocating plantations at higher altitudes or to places where climate is milder. But again, this is not that easy to do. Brazil is a huge country and is a country that may do that. Other countries have fewer possibilities, but certainly, well, you should find areas that, are not protected by, deforestation protection measures. So we should reinforce coffee production where coffee production is already present, but this requires heavy investments. For instance, it has been calculated that these investments should account for 10% of the value of a plantation. So a coffee plantation should have a value of at least $10,000 per hectare. So we are talking about large investments, at least 1,000 euros per hectare. We have almost 12 million hectares that are grown with coffee, And while the Brazilian hectares are well managed, and there are 2 million more or less, so we have another 10 million, and that would mean 10 billion of investments to save coffee production in the long run. This investment can be spreaded over time, over decades, but we should get ready for that. We should get ready for an investment of up to 1 billion per year to reach this goal. And this can be done only through proper international mobilization. And you are here witnessing the presence of 2 intergovernmental agencies, one referring to the UN, UNIDO, and another one referring to the International Coffee Organization. We have 2 governments, another coffee intergovernmental organization, and a private company. And so testifying the commitment by the specific players in the field. This kind of mobilization is the maximum level that can be reached in international cooperation. So we are almost experimenting and testing something that has never been done before, because Italy and the international coffee industry want to be partners, also in order to, follow in the steps of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have a specific goal on international partnerships and cooperation. Thank you very much, Mr. Illy. Thank you all. Unfortunately, it's very hard to make a summary after so many interesting contributions. Certainly, every day, 3 billion coffee cups are drunk, and so we want to keep drinking coffee. We want to improve, value distribution in the coffee production world, and also we want to create jobs for young people and young generations in this sector. Thank you very much for this panel. Before concluding, we're going to have the signature of a very important declaration between the Inter-African Coffee Organization and UNIDO. They're going, and also I've been asked to read a very short statement, so the Rimini meeting organizers asked me to do so. So everybody can contribute to the meeting in Rimini and contribute to this great human adventure. And you find all along the fairgrounds, Dona Ora station to donate freely in order to continue to support the meeting. And another important thing is that part of the donations collected during the meeting will be donated for the emergency in the Holy Land. And this is a decision that has been made in order to somehow endorse the compelling words of Cardinal Pizzaballa in his opening speech at this year meeting's edition. So you can sign the joint declaration now. And we are the witnesses of this very important signature. I don't know if you can stay here for a second, please, just to sort of be a witness of this joint declaration signature. Thank you.
Grazie mille, grazie a lei. firma. Facciamo così, questo lo spostiamo. Se no casca. Possiamo avere una foto di tutti quanti? Can we have a picture, everybody? No. Maybe. Can we have a picture, everybody? Right there. Ecco qui, grazie. Grazie. Molto bene, questo me lo riprendo. Questo qui. Your Excellency,